to Night Search, the voice of the paranormal. I'm Eddie Middleton in Memphis, Tennessee. Tonight, joining me as a guest co-host is Richard Shellum, our staff astrologer. Colleen can't be on with us tonight. She'll be back next week. We are going to be talking with Laura Knight, and I think she has a pretty chilling story to tell about the research she has been doing over the last, I think, like 10 years, and she's uncovered, I think, a scenario that should get your full attention. At least it would provide some very serious food for thought. So we're going to be having Laura Knight's search on Night Search, you might say, tonight. Laura, thanks for being on with us.
Hi, Eddie. I'm glad to be here. And I don't know if it's necessarily chilling.
Well, it was chilling to me. That's all I can say.
Well, people who look at it at first glance do get that impression, but after they dig deeper into the subject, then they discover that it's possibly not so chilling after all.
Well, maybe we'll have a better conclusion to this thing late when we sign off tonight. I just, was finding the whole thing rather ominous, this idea of the manipulated matrix, and like the movie, Why don't we start out, though, and have you just tell us a little bit about your background and then how you got into doing this kind of research that you've been into, like, for the last 10 years, and then we'll talk about the book you've written about this.
Well, actually, it's not really the last 10 years that I've been doing research. It's actually all my life.
Okay.
It's only since 1993 that I have actually been looking at the so-called alien question. And that was because I was essentially forced to look at it because I had my own experience that essentially produced a life-changing look at my belief systems, because up until that point in time, even though I had been involved in paranormal research, as some people call it, worked as a hypnotherapist, off and on, mostly on for 20-some years. I had never considered the possibility of the existence of aliens or the possibility of alien abductions being actual. It was kind of at the bottom of my list of possibilities that I was forced to look at it. It changed my life, and once I looked at it, I became determined to discover exactly what it was and why it had been so concealed from me for so long. Not just me, but the world at large. Most human beings are blissfully unaware.
Yeah, Laura, I was reading on your website about the exorcist information where you performed a number of very, very heavy-duty exorcisms. Was that your introduction to the aliens?
Well, yes and no. Through the years as a hypnotherapist, most of my work dealt with standard hypnotherapy. I started out in the earlier years, just doing basic behavior modification type things, or stress reduction, or teaching people how to reduce their stress by self-hypnotic methods. Very basic stuff. Then as the years went by, we progressed into other kinds of therapy. I did some workshops, I did some more training, got into past life therapy, discovered that this was really interesting. It really worked really well.
Yeah, I know you're familiar with Dolores Cannon,
Mm-hmm.
And she got into the alien abduction research through doing regressive hypnosis and finding, that the past lives, the people have this kind of alien element showing up.
Well, I never, up to that point, I never came across that, because it was really a kind of therapeutic modality that was pretty set. It was kind of a cut and dried technique. You learn this technique, you apply the technique to the symptoms of the problem. The person gets relief, and that's it. You don't get too experimental. And of course, from my perspective, when you have someone under hypnosis, you're basically like a brain surgeon. You know, you don't want to cut too much and you don't want to cut too little. You have to be extremely careful and extremely ethical. So I didn't.
That's a good analogy. Now I've never heard that one.
Yeah. I never felt inclined to play with things that were untried or untested with people, and as a result, I went gradually, step by step, through these different types of therapeutic modalities, learning them, applying them, and learning them. I went from the past life therapy to doing what's called spirit release work. But the funny thing was I actually did my first exorcism before I even knew anything about spirit release work. And I went from there to deciding that I had to learn something about this, because once I had come across an individual who was, what shall we say, possessed.
Were they showing some pretty dramatic manifestations?
Oh, indeed.
Could you share a little bit of that with us?
Well, it was actually a child. And this child had gone from being a normal, happy-go-lucky, ordinary 6-year-old who played with cars in the sandbox or, did the normal 6-year-old thing, to being literally adultly demonic at periods. His mother was, needless to say, hysterical. And after taking him to a regular medical type person and deciding that she didn't want to drug her child, she eventually came to me, and we did an exorcism, and there it was. But the thing was I didn't know I was doing an exorcism. I was too stupid. And when I asked certain questions under hypnosis, another being identified itself as another being.
Did the voice change?
Oh, the voice changed. Yes, indeed. It was kind of a mild version of the movie, The Exorcist.
Was it an adult-sounding voice?
It was an adult-sounding voice. It had depth and resonance. It wasn't the squeaky little 6-year-old voice of this kid, for sure.
Well, that would give anybody the willies, sure enough.
It did, and that was when a really serious question had to be asked, which was, how does a child become possessed? Because this child was not in any way, shape, form, or fashion anything like the kid in the movie The Exorcist, like playing with Ouija boards or, diddling around in ways that they shouldn't be doing, or exposed in any way to any kind of person or activity that was any way, shape, or form demonic. He was essentially a child in a very, very Christian home, and with a very Christian environment, and it just there it was. How does this happen?
Because I've always heard that one has to, in some fashion, invite them in.
Nope.
But apparently there are cases where they simply attack without any invitation whatsoever.
Well, it's actually worse than that, because as I learned much more about it, I discovered that probably 70, 80, and I'm being conservative with this estimate, 70 or 80% of the population is attached by some sort of entity at any given point in time. In fact, once I had begun applying the technique of spirit release therapeutically, I have never had a subject who was not attached.
Are you familiar with the work of Edith Fiore, the Quiet Dead?
Oh, yeah. Edith Fiore was one of the models for the kind of work I was doing. Her work, Bill Baldwin, Carl Wickland, after I got a little more confident with doing it, I developed some techniques of my own, and after so many years doing this kind of work, I became more comfortable with my command of my skill, and branched out in some ways. But that was a period of time that led up to the introduction to the alien field.
Yeah, I know Edith Fiore thinks that most people have had these spirit attachments at some point in their lifetime. And then she also got into alien abduction research through her regressive hypnosis work also.
Right. Well, let me say right now, because it'll drive me crazy if I don't. Regressive hypnosis is a misnomer. I don't know who started the term or who began to use it first, but the proper way to describe it is hypnotic regression, because regressive hypnosis would be a backward form of hypnosis, and the actual thing that's being done is somebody is being hypnotically